Ever wondered who broke the quill ceiling during the Dark Ages? Bet you thought medieval women were just trapped in towers or stirring cauldrons. Right, think again. Number 5. Christine de Pizan, Europe's first professional female writer. Did you know a widowed mother of 3 became one of the Middle Ages' most influential authors? Christine de Pizan didn't plan to make history. But sometimes destiny has other ideas. Born in Venice in 1364 and raised in the French royal court, Christine's life seemed predictable enough. Her father, Thomas de Pizan, served as astrologer and physician to King Charles V of France, providing Christine unusual access to the royal library. While most girls received little education, Christine absorbed knowledge like a sponge, developing a passion for literature that would eventually save her family. Her comfortable world collapsed when her husband, Etienne du Castel, died suddenly of plague in 1389. At just 25, Christine found herself a widow with 3 children, elderly parents, and crushing debts. Rather than remarry, she made an extraordinary decision. She would support her family with her mind. "Fortune's malice has not crushed me completely," she wrote, "for I still have the use of my body and the lively mind that God has given me." In a society where female authors were virtually non-existent, Christine began writing love ballads and poems. Her work caught attention at court, and soon aristocratic patrons were commissioning her writings. She didn't just dabble. Christine threw herself completely into the literary world, producing an astonishing body of work ranging from love poetry to biographies, from military manuals to political treatises. But Christine truly made history with the Book of the City of Ladies in 1405. Tired of literature that demeaned women, she created a literary city populated by great women from history and mythology. She directly challenged prevailing misogynistic attitudes, writing, "If women had written the books, I know that they would have written differently because they know they are falsely accused." Her Treasury of the City of Ladies followed, offering practical advice for women of all social classes, from queens to prostitutes, on navigating a man's world with dignity. She didn't mince words when addressing how unfairly society treated her gender. Not all men, and especially the wisest, share the opinion that it is bad for women to be educated. But it is very true that many foolish men have claimed this because it upset them that women knew more than they did. Christine's career spanned over 3 decades, producing at least 41 works. She secured her own financial independence, supervised the publication of her manuscripts, and defended women's intellectual capabilities in literary debates with prominent men. She even produced a celebration of Joan of Arc in 1429, one of the earliest literary treatments of the Maid of Orleans. After witnessing the insanity of King Charles VI and the English invasion during the 100 Years' War, Christine retreated to a convent where she died around 1430. She left behind not just beautiful illuminated manuscripts, but a radical idea that a woman could live by her intellect and challenge the status quo through her writings. Ever thought a medieval woman could become Europe's first professional female writer and a feminist pioneer centuries before feminism existed? Christine de Pizan did exactly that. Number 4. Hildegard of Bingen, the Sibyl of the Rhine. Have you ever heard music composed by a 12th century nun? Or seen medical texts written by a woman who had visions of God? Meet Hildegard of Bingen, the medieval polymath, who would make Leonardo da Vinci look like a slacker. Born in 1098 to noble parents in present-day Germany, Hildegard's life took an unusual turn early. At just 8 years old, her parents offered her as a tithe to the church, essentially gifting their 10th child to God. She was enclosed with an older nun named Jutta, at the Benedictine monastery of Disibodenberg, initially living in just 2 rooms. Young Hildegard would have seemed an unlikely candidate for fame. Sickly from childhood, she suffered migraines that produced vivid visions. She received little formal education. She learned to read Latin psalters, but had no training in grammar, rhetoric, or writing. Yet something extraordinary was happening in that enclosed space. Hildegard was developing one of the most remarkable minds of the Middle Ages. After Jutta's death in 1136, Hildegard was elected head of their growing women's community. But leading a convent wasn't enough for this extraordinary woman. At age 42, Hildegard experienced a divine command to write what you see and hear. Despite her trembling and fear, she began recording the visions that had haunted her since childhood. Her first major work, Scivias, Know the Ways, took 10 years to complete. Its theological content was so impressive that Pope Eugenius III read excerpts aloud at the Synod of Trier in 1147 to 1148 and authorized Hildegard to continue writing. This papal blessing catapulted the once obscure nun to European fame. Emboldened by this recognition, Hildegard pushed for independence. She moved her nuns to Rupertsberg near Bingen, establishing her own convent against fierce resistance from the male monks who didn't want to lose control of her community. Hildegard's intellectual output is almost unbelievable. She composed at least 77 sacred songs and Ordo Virtutum, the oldest, Surviving Morality, Play with Music. Without formal training, she created a musical style so distinctive that it remains immediately recognizable today, filled with soaring melodies that stretch female voices to their limits. Her medical and scientific texts, including Physica and Causae et Curae, documented hundreds of plants and their healing properties, along with treatments for various illnesses. She developed her own alternative alphabet and language called the lingua ignota. Her theological writings explored the divine feminine, describing God as maternal and nurturing in an age when divinity was almost exclusively portrayed as male. I, the fiery life of divine wisdom. I ignite the beauty of the plains. I sparkle the waters. I burn in the sun and the moon and the stars, she wrote, giving voice to divine feminine wisdom. Perhaps most surprisingly for a 12th century nun, Hildegard wrote frankly about human sexuality, describing female pleasure and the experience of orgasm, knowledge that raises questions about how an enclosed nun acquired such understanding. Despite her reputation for holiness, Hildegard was no pushover. She conducted 4 preaching tours across Germany at a time when women were forbidden from preaching, admonishing clergy for corruption and moral laxity. She corresponded with popes, emperors, kings, and bishops, never hesitating to offer unsolicited advice. When church officials placed her convent under interdict, forbidding communion, for burying an excommunicated man, the elderly abbess fought back ferociously until the ban was lifted. Her contemporaries called her Sibyl of the Rhine, likening her to the ancient prophetesses. After her death in 1179 at age 81, attempts to canonize Hildegard stalled repeatedly. It wasn't until 2012, a mere 833 years after her death, that Pope Benedict XVI finally made her sainthood official and named her a Doctor of the Church, one of only 4 women to hold that title. Can you imagine a woman with so little formal education becoming one of history's greatest polymaths? What visions might we achieve if we listened to the Hildegards of our own time? Number 3, Marie de France, the mysterious literary pioneer. Did a noblewoman secretly write racy werewolf stories in the 12th century? Was she hiding her identity because her work was too scandalous? Marie de France is the literary equivalent of a ghost, immensely influential but frustratingly elusive. We know her name only because she identified herself once, writing, Marie Ainam si suis de France. My name is Marie, and I am from France. Beyond that, almost everything about her is speculation. Her collection of 12 narrative poems known as Lais revolutionized medieval storytelling, yet we're not entirely sure who she was. Scholars have proposed she might have been Mary, Abbess of Shaftesbury, and half-sister to Henry II, or Marie, Countess of Champagne, or perhaps Marie, Countess of Boulogne. Whoever she was, she moved in elite circles and possessed exceptional education for a 12th century woman. Marie's works appeared around 1170, written in Anglo-Norman, the French dialect spoken by England's aristocracy after the Norman conquest. Her Lais are masterpieces of concise storytelling, transforming Celtic folklore into sophisticated literary narratives filled with magic passion and psychological insight. What makes Marie truly revolutionary is her subject matter, in an era when women were expected to be passive and obedient. Marie wrote stories where female desire drives the plot. Her heroines actively pursue love, sometimes outside marriage, and are portrayed sympathetically. In Lanval, a fairy queen becomes the lover and savior of a knight rejected by King Arthur's court. In Eliduc, a knight's mistress saves the life of his wife, and the two women become so devoted to each other that they enter a convent together, while the knight becomes a monk. Marie didn't shy away from the erotic. Her tales feature magical beds, secret trysts, and passionate encounters. Bisclavret, perhaps her most famous lie, tells the story of a nobleman who transforms into a werewolf 3 days each week. When his wife betrays him by stealing his clothes, needed for his transformation back to human form, he's trapped in wolf shape until he can reveal her treachery. Her writing displays remarkable psychological depth. In Yonick, she writes about a woman imprisoned in a tower by her jealous husband, who finds escape through an affair with a shape-shifting knight, who visits her in the form of a hawk. When the husband discovers their relationship and kills her lover, Marie doesn't condemn the adultery, but instead portrays it as the natural consequence of the husband's cruelty. No one should blame her if she sought to love, Marie writes, directly challenging contemporary moral standards. Beyond her Lais, Marie translated Aesop's fables from Latin into French, making these ancient stories accessible to a wider aristocratic audience. She also wrote Les Purgatoires Saint Patrice, Saint Patrick's Purgatory, a religious text describing a knight's journey through purgatory. These varied works demonstrate her exceptional language skills and versatility as a writer. Marie's influence extended far beyond her lifetime. Her tales were adapted by later writers, including Geoffrey Chaucer, whose Franklin's Tale in the Canterbury Tales draws directly from Marie's L'Œil du Frêne. Her innovative narrative techniques and romantic themes helped establish the foundations for courtly romance literature. What's particularly striking about Marie is her literary self-awareness. She knew exactly what she was doing when she crafted her tales, even explaining her artistic purpose. When one has the opportunity to hear a really fine tale, it would be petty and mean-spirited to keep it from others. Writing in the prologue to her Lais, she boldly states her ambition for literary immortality. Whoever gets knowledge from God of science and eloquent speech should not be silent or conceal it, but willingly demonstrate it. Marie understood the power of stories to preserve human experience and chose to center women's perspectives in her tellings. In a world that often silenced female voices, she created heroines who spoke, desired, and acted according to their own will. 8 centuries later, we still don't know exactly who Marie de France was, but does that matter? Her words outlived her just as she intended. Her voice speaks clearly across time, proving that a woman's perspective on love, desire, and human complexity could create literature that endures. Who was this mysterious Marie? Was she a noblewoman writing forbidden stories? A nun with an active imagination? A courtier observing the romantic intrigues around her? Her identity remains one of literature's most tantalizing mysteries. Number 2. Hrotsvitha of Gandersheim. The first German poet. What kind of nun writes plays about virgin martyrs, stubborn prostitutes, and people being burned alive? And did she really create bawdy comedies to replace Terence's pagan works? In the quiet halls of Gandersheim Abbey, in 10th century Saxony, modern-day Germany, a canoness named Hrotsvitha was busy making literary history. Born around 935 CE to a Saxon noble family, Hrotsvitha entered the abbey as a young woman, finding there an unusual level of intellectual freedom. Gandersheim was an imperial abbey, meaning it answered directly to the emperor, not local church authorities, giving its residents more autonomy than typical nuns. Hrotsvitha, sometimes spelled Hrotsvit or Hrotsvitha, developed into an intellectual powerhouse within these privileged walls. She mastered Latin, the language of scholarship, not normally taught to women, and immersed herself in classical and Christian literature. Then she did something unprecedented. She began to write original works in genres previously dominated by men. There are many Catholics, and we cannot entirely acquit ourselves of the charge, who, attracted by the polished elegance of the style of pagan writers, prefer their works to the Holy Scriptures. She wrote, "There are others who, although they are deeply attached to the sacred writings and have no liking for most pagan productions, make an exception in favor of the works of Terence and, fascinated by the charm of the manner, risk being corrupted by the wickedness of the matter." Create Christian alternatives to these beloved but morally problematic classics. Hrotsvitha became the first person since antiquity to write Latin drama, and the first identifiable German poet in either gender. Her name itself seems destined for this role. She claimed it meant strong voice or mighty cry, though modern scholars translate it as white rose. Hrotsvitha's 6 plays reimagined the Roman comedies of Terence, but with Christian themes. Instead of young men pursuing love interests, her protagonists are virgin martyrs resisting sexual advances and defending their faith. In Dulcicius, 3 Christian virgins mock their pagan persecutor who, divinely confused, ends up embracing and kissing kitchen pots and pans instead of the women. In Abraham, a hermit disguises himself as a lover to rescue his niece from a brothel. Callimachus features a young man so consumed with lust for a married Christian woman that he attempts to violate her corpse, only to be struck dead himself, and then resurrected after repenting. These weren't exactly the nun-written stories you might expect. Hrotsvitha didn't shy away from depicting lust, violence, and temptation. She just made sure virtue triumphed in the end. Her plays display remarkable psychological insight and often feature strong, articulate female characters who outwit their male oppressors through intelligence and faith. Beyond drama, Hrotsvitha composed 8 narrative poems or legends, 6 of which celebrate the lives of saints and martyrs. Her 2 historical epics praise the accomplishments of Otto I, the Holy Roman Emperor, and recount the early history of Gandersheim Abbey itself. What makes Hrotsvitha truly extraordinary is her conscious literary ambition. In the preface to her plays, she acknowledges the boldness of her endeavor. "I, the strong voice of Gandersheim, have not hesitated to imitate in my writings a poet whose works are so widely read." She knew she was entering male literary territory, and did so deliberately, believing her gender shouldn't limit her intellectual pursuits. Despite her apparent humility, She frequently refers to herself as a poor, weak woman. And the least of all, Hrotsvitha displays remarkable confidence in her artistic purpose. She intentionally created a new kind of Christian literature that could compete with beloved classical texts while promoting values she considered morally superior. Hrotsvitha's works reveal a woman of considerable learning, familiar not only with religious texts, but also with classical literature, mathematics, philosophy, and history. Her Latin displays sophisticated wordplay, rhythmic patterns, and rhyming prose that was innovative for her time. She even dabbled in mathematics, writing commentaries on arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. After her death, sometime after 973 CE, Hrotsvitha's works were largely forgotten until 1494, when the German humanist Conrad Celtus discovered her manuscripts in a Bavarian monastery library. Her rediscovery during the Renaissance sparked new interest in this extraordinary medieval voice. Modern scholars continue to debate whether her plays were ever performed or were meant only to be read aloud within the abbey community. Some question whether a 10th century canoness could have produced such sophisticated works without male assistance. Yet the distinctive voice and consistent themes across her writings point to a single remarkable author who knew exactly what she was doing. Hrotsvitha stands as the first German to write drama since the fall of the Roman Empire, and the first known female historian. Her works provide rare insight into female intellectual life during what's often called the Dark Ages, proving those centuries weren't nearly as dark for women's creativity as we might assume. What might have happened if Hrotsvitha's literary experiment had inspired more medieval women to write plays? And why does history keep forgetting the women who dared to create? Number 1. Anna Komnene, the Byzantine princess historian. Would you believe a Byzantine princess wrote one of history's most important medieval texts while under house arrest? How did she go from nearly becoming empress to spending her final decades confined to a convent? Born in the purple chamber of the imperial palace in Constantinople in 1083, Anna Komnene seemed destined for greatness from birth. As the eldest child of Emperor Alexios I Komnenos and Empress Irene Doukaina, Anna received an education virtually unprecedented for a woman of her time. Her royal parents spared no expense, providing tutors in literature, philosophy, history, theology, mathematics, and medicine. I have read thoroughly the works of Aristotle and the dialogues of Plato, and I have fortified my mind with the quaternion of learning, Anna boasted, referring to the quadrivium of arithmetic, music, geometry, and astronomy. Her claim wasn't empty. Contemporary scholars acknowledged her as one of the most learned women of the Byzantine Empire. Anna's ambitions matched her education. As her father's firstborn, she was initially betrothed to Constantine Ducas, the son of a previous emperor, making her the presumptive future empress. She even received the title Augusta Empress as a child. But fate had other plans. Constantine died, and Anna's mother gave birth to a son, John, who became their father's heir. Anna instead married Nikephoros Bryennios, a distinguished general and historian. Far from a mere political union, their marriage appears to have been intellectually compatible. Together, they formed the center of a scholarly circle in Constantinople. Anna established something of a salon, gathering philosophers, scientists, and theologians for intellectual discussions. She became known as a medical expert, treating her father during his final illness. When Emperor Alexios died in 1118, Anna allegedly participated in a conspiracy with her mother to place her husband on the throne instead of her brother John. The plot failed, and Anna never forgave her brother for claiming what she considered her rightful position. Years later, after her husband's death, She was implicated in another plot against John and subsequently confined to the Komnene monastery that her mother had founded. This confinement, however, became the catalyst for Anna's greatest achievement. In the monastery, she began work on the Alexiad, an epic biographical history of her father's reign. Written in 15 volumes, this monumental work covered the years 1069 to 1118, providing crucial information about the First Crusade from the Byzantine perspective. The empire's conflicts with Turkish and Norman invaders, and detailed accounts of court politics. These events I shall try to describe accurately, not in order to show off my literary skill, but so that matters of such great importance should not be left unrecorded for future generations, Anna wrote. Despite this claim of objectivity, the Alexiad clearly aims to glorify her father's reign and justify his policies. Yet even with this bias, it remains an invaluable historical source, filled with vivid descriptions and psychological insights rarely found in medieval histories. Anna's writing broke conventions in multiple ways. She included herself in the narrative, describing her birth, education, and personal reactions to events, an unusual approach for Byzantine historians. She documented her grief at her husband's death with raw emotion. Dark night enveloped my soul. There was fire in my heart, and I was seized with dire trembling. Though writing in a style modeled on ancient Greek historians like Thucydides, Anna incorporated contemporary details that make her work come alive. Descriptions of battle wounds, emotional states of characters, and even her own conflicted feelings as she tried to maintain composure. Her perspective as a woman occasionally emerges in surprising ways. She criticizes Western European women who accompanied the Crusaders for riding astride horses like men rather than side saddle, and expresses disgust at the Norman practice of shaving their faces. Yet she also provides sympathetic portrayals of several female historical figures, including her grandmother Anna Damascene, who effectively governed the empire, while Alexios was on military campaigns. The Alexiad isn't without flaws. Anna's chronology sometimes becomes confused, and her intense hatred for her brother John, whom she never mentions by name, colors her account of succession events. Her descriptions of military matters occasionally lack precision, though she attempts to compensate by consulting experts. As a royal insider excluded from power, Anna created a unique historical document that combines intimate knowledge of Byzantine court life with scholarly erudition. She completed the Alexiad around 1148 and appears to have died shortly afterward, leaving behind what many consider the most important historical text of the Komnenian period. Modern assessments of Anna have evolved dramatically. 19th-century historians often dismissed her as vain, vindictive, and overly emotional. Contemporary scholars recognize her as a skilled literary stylist and a crucial source for understanding Byzantine politics, society, and intellectual life during a pivotal period when East and West collided during the Crusades. In her own words, Anna sought to build an eternal memorial more lasting than stone monuments. She succeeded beyond what even her considerable ambition might have imagined, creating a work still read and studied nearly a millennium later. Is it time we recognized Anna Komnene, not just as a princess historian, but as one of the great chroniclers of the medieval world? How many other brilliant women's voices might we have lost to history's silence?